Now, when we are studying, the most important subject, in my understanding, is Sarf. Right. I think this is the most important subject, and I think many students will also agree with me that Sarf is the most important subject. If we fail this subject, then that's it. Then that's it. There is no way possible we can study, we will be able to read books of hadith. There is no way possible that we'll be able to study the classical texts of fiqh in their form, right? Because as many students will agree, studying in Arabic is a different thing, right? The Arabic language is extremely different, and it's nothing like learning from English manuals. Let's just put it like that. And also another thing I forgot to mention is that during your studies you also learn about tafsir and Quran, and subhanallah, that's a very important thing. Everybody wants to understand the Quran, right? So subhanallah, Allahu Akbar. That's a goal that we want to have as well. We want to be able to read the Quran. Another intention is all of these books, all of these Arabic books out there, seas of knowledge and oceans of knowledge out there. We want to be able to have access to them, and we want to be able to read them without having to read translations, because translations are very, sometimes especially in this day and age, very watered down sometimes, and sometimes not very representative. So that's why when we're studying, we have to have all of these goals in front of us. And when it comes to Sarf, the first, Sarf, I would always say, you must learn Sarf slowly and carefully. Do not rush this. If in Sarf, you basically, as students know, you get your gurdans, you get your, in English, what do you call them? Your cycles, your tables, your tables. You get your tables, you get one fresh table every week. If you're studying full time, then you probably get a fresh table every day or two. So, and you are expected to know it. Do not be the kind of student who, teacher has given fa'ala, fa'alu, and then sometime later they give yuf'alu, yuf'alan, yuf'aluna, and you still don't know what bahath is this word from, or what the root letters are, or is it madi, is it mudari', is it mustaqbil even, is it amr, is it nahi, and mustaqbil and mudari' are together, but you get the picture. Or is it ma'ruf, is it majhool? If you don't know, subhanallah, that's it. Believe me, that's it. I would say that it's better for you to stay at fa'ala rather than do something which you have no understanding of, right? And this is what happens, you see, subhanallah, the teacher will keep on extending, and students, subhanallah, just let go of the previous qirtans, right? That's a mistake. And another mistake that students do with Sarf is that they write their qirtans down all the time. They have to write down the scale. Then when it comes to reading to the teacher, especially if sisters have male teachers and there's parda in between and the teacher cannot see, a lot of sisters used to cheat. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of sisters used to cheat and they used to read from the paper, and I used to abhor it. I used to not like it at all. And I think some students knew that, right? And sadly, they're not with us today, right? Again, it's the thing. Do we want to please our teachers by saying, "Wow, we can do fa'ala in 2 seconds"? Is that what our intention is, or is our intention to seek knowledge for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be able to use this knowledge in a way that Allah is pleased with? What's our intention? Is our intention to please our parents? Is our intention to please our husbands? What is the intention? That's also something we have to constantly be reminding ourselves of, right? So that's what I was saying, that take your time studying Sarf. Take your time studying Sarf. Do the Gurdans slowly. Take it slowly. And the particular bab that you are doing, so for example, if you're doing Nasara Yansuru in the Safat al-Masadir, the book of vocabulary that students have, and these days it's called Cream of Arabic Morphology, and there's an English version to it now, and there are about 56 words in the first Nasara Yansuru, about 50-60 words. Make sure that the week or the day or every 2 or 3 days, or however it is, that you are given that particular Gurdan, that you do those 50-60 words at home or wherever. Make sure that you've practiced the particular scale that your teacher has given with those 50-60 words. So Nasara, Qatala, Badala, Basata, Qa'ada, Dakhala, Kharaja, all of those that I'm giving you, sit down, divide it up. If you get one new Gurdan a week, then do about 10 words every day. Do the same, the Gurdan, the pattern that it follows. So فعل فعل فعلوا فعلت فعلت فعلنا فعلت فعلتما فعلتم فعلتي فعلتما فعلتونا فعلت فعلنا, and do that with everything, all of the other Nasara, Nasara, Nasaru, Nasarat, Nasaratan, etc. Right? Do it all the way for all of your 10. And how long does it take seriously to do 10 Gurdans a day? There needs to be dedication. This is something that, subhanAllah, it's not hard to memorize 10 words. This is something, subhanAllah, we can do while we're driving. This is something we can do, subhanAllah, while we are just in the kitchen cooking. It's not a difficult thing. It's really not a difficult thing. And make sure that those 10 Gurdans are done from memory, that you memorize them, right? So when it comes to class time, right, you are very confident. That's very important. And also it's very important to memorize the rules that your teacher gives. Very important to memorize the rules that your teacher gives. If your teacher says don't use a textbook, don't use a textbook. Because sometimes textbooks can actually make it difficult for you, make you confused, and that's why sometimes it's just best to leave it to your teacher. And when your teacher feels right, if they give you permission to use the book, then use a book and study from the book. But never ever do things independently. Always take your teacher's instruction. If your teacher has given you permission, and if your teacher said, okay, we're going to study from this book, from Treasures of Arabic Morphology, for example, then that's fine. But otherwise, no book. Our teacher used to say, make your own book. So, make sure that you do that, going around very thoroughly. The rules, make sure you understand them. If you do not understand them, then how are you going to do the Gurdan? Ask your teacher, to ask him, I'm struggling. Or if you don't want to ask a teacher, ask a fellow student who's very, 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 very apt, and let there be no jealousy in the heart. There shouldn't be any of that between students. It's a blessing to have a student who is very, very intelligent in the class. So consider it as a blessing from Allah and ask them, right? If you really have to, I don't understand this, please explain. And get it clarified. And do not move on to the next Gurdan until you have that clarified. And again, practice every week whatever you've been given, the Gurdan that you've been given. About 50 to 60 words, Gurdan them. Right. Another aspect to Sarf is obviously learning about, about the Mudakkar, Mu'annath, the Ghaib, Hadir, Mutakallim, the Wahid, Tathniya, Jama', all of the Sigha patterns basically. So if I was to say Kharaju, then what is the Sigha of that? And students sometimes struggle a lot to say, well, Kharaju is Jama' Mudhakkar Ghaib, right? Very quickly. They have to sit there thinking, it's Jama', it's Jama', it's Ghaib, and it's Mudhakkar. So in order to make this very, very clear, remember that the cycles, the Gurdans always follow a very similar pattern. They're the same. You have Sarf Kabir and Sarf Saghir. So the Sarf Kabir is the, when you do the big one, which is you dissect each section. Like Madi, you dissect it all. Then you go from Fa'ala to Fa'altu, and you go from Yaf'alu to Naf'alu, and you go from Fu'il to Fu'ila to Fu'iltu, and you go from Yuf'alu to Nuf'alu, etc. So that's the Sarf Kabir. And the Sarf Saghir is when everything of that particular bab, so for example Nasr Yansuru, it's all put together, everything is put together, and you know when you study that, Nasara, Yansuru, Nasran, right? وهو ناصر, etc. etc. So as like that's what we call Sarf Saghir. So the Sarf Kabir and the Sarf Saghir. Make sure, understand that these two follow the general same pattern. So the Sarf Saghir, Sarf Kabir, right? There are 6 in the Ghaib, 6 in the Hadir, and 6 in the 2 in the Mutakallim. So that makes it 14. And it's very easy. The first 3 of the 6 of Ghaib are Mudhakkar, the bottom 3 are Mu'annath, then the first 3 of the 6 of Hadir are Mudhakkar, bottom 3 are Mu'annath, then in Mutakallim you have the first one is both Mudhakkar and Mu'annath, but only Wahid, and the last one is Tathniya, Jama', Mudhakkar, and or rather Mu'annath. So it's not that hard. It's just a matter of practicing. The more you know the Qur'an, the more you practice, the more association you make in your mind that okay, Kharaju fits in, have this picture in your mind of all of the sighas. Like I just told you, very brief summary. Have that picture in your mind and collect, look at them together. Right, look at them together. So Kharaju fits with this sigha. Believe me, inshallah ta'ala, it's not hard. It's just a matter of practice, right? If you really have to, you can do this. You can say, when you're doing the Gurdan, when you're practicing this, for example, Kharaja Wahid, Kharaja Wahid, Ghaib, Mudhakkar, right? And then you say Kharaja, Tathniya, Ghaib, Mudhakkar. Kharaju, Jama' Mudhakkar, Ghaib. Kharajat, واحد مؤنث you can say anyhow واحد غائب مؤنث وواحد مؤنث غائب, doesn't matter. And then خرجتا, however you do it, واحد خرجتا واحد تثنية مؤنث غائب, and then خرجنا would be جمع مؤنث غائب. So خرجت واحد مؤنث غائب, خرجتا تثنية تثنية مؤنث غائب, and then خرجنا جمع مؤنث جمع مؤنث غائب. And you can do that if you want to try and make a relationship between these two. And you see, subhanAllah, Gurdan should come like that. Another thing to do is, an exercise that we were told to do is, throughout the week, the Gurdan or that you have been said, look into the Quran and find words on the same scale. So if you've done fa'ala, or rather nasara, done suru, nasara, on that pattern, find a 3-lettered verb in the Quran and find about 10 of them that have it. So in the Quran, if you look around, there are many 3-lettered words. Obviously they don't come all the time. For example, khalaqa is there, so you recognize that khalaqa, and then do the Gurdan of khalaqa, and write down. So you may have found khalaqa, you might have found khalaqu, or you might have found khuliqa. And so what you do is you just write down the sigha of that particular word that you found, and then do Gurdan of it, just for extra practice, and do about 10 of them every week. So you might have even found the khalu in the Quran, the khalu. So write down the sigha, do the Gurdan of it. Practice like that. It has to be very active, moving around. So the practice of your Gurdans, as we were mentioning, has to be very practical. This is the key thing. Unfortunately, or sadly rather, some of our madaris still teach in a very I can't exactly remember the actual word for it, which they use in education. It's a method of learning which is quite dull. Sadly, it's the case where a lot of it is just about, write something down on the board. The student just memorizes it, and that's how it is. And there's very, very little practical exercise involved with that method of learning. So in some parts of the world, that is how they do it. That is how they even study their maths and their science and their languages and their geography and everything else. So it may work for them, but definitely in the West, alhamdulillah, there have been other more recent discoveries in education and what methods are better, and I believe personally that we as Muslims should definitely be more educated in these things and take them on board for our own benefit, right? So there are different ways. You must have heard that there are different ways a student learns. Some students are more visual, others are auditory learners, and some are kinesthetic. So the visual learners, they need something in front of them. They need something visual to relate with in order to learn. And then you have the auditory learners who don't actually mind that, the first method of learning I told you about, which is just simply teacher says something, the student memorizes, because this auditory learner needs to listen. And so this method fits them very well. And the kinesthetic learner is the learner who needs to do something hands-on. They need to feel it, practically in order to be able to learn. So ideally, if we're talking to a teacher, the teacher needs to try and cater for every student in the class. And not every student is an auditory learner, not every student is a visual learner, not every student is a kinesthetic learner. Some students may be visual and auditory, some may be auditory and kinesthetic, so they may have two of the three. But the importance that the important matter here is that the teacher needs to be able to cater for the for the for the visual learner, the auditory learner, and the kinesthetic learner. This is very important whenever we're teaching. And it's not that I've done a PGCE or anything like that, but alhamdulillah I've taught for a few years, and that has given quite a bit of experience in of itself, right? That you will definitely find very many different types of students, especially when it comes to children. So it's important that we try to learn very, very carefully and practically and actively, especially when it comes to a subject like Sarf. There needs to be a lot of exercise, a lot of practice. Do not undermine this, right? So many students just want to make their teachers happy by doing a Gurdan, but they forget about everything else. And what happens is, in about the third or fourth year of their study, they think, I can't do this anymore. Arabic is too hard, I'm going to leave, right? And they haven't even touched the fruit, the essence, the core of their maqsad in starting madrasa in the first place, which was to study the higher books, to know the Quran and means, and to be able to read the hadith and the fiqh. So it's important to learn practically and actively in a method that enables you to do those things in the future. That's what always should be on our minds. Okay. Another thing in Sarf, I'll finish this section of Sarf like this, that make sure that when you are learning new vocabulary, so it depends on what you are studying. If you are doing conversational Arabic, then you'll be learning lugha, you'll be learning some vocabulary from there. If you're doing a book in adab, in literature, so you might be studying Qasas al-Nabiyyin or another book, then with those vocabulary that you learn, right, try to form sentences. A good thing is this is actually bringing your nahu and your sarf and everything together. Alright, you'll be able to write a sentence, but very simple sentences like Zayd ate food, you should be able to do that with just understanding sarf. Simply, Zayd ate food. So it's really possible, right? I think that should do for the Sarf. And what happens is, when the rules start to get more intense in Sarf, and eventually they do, when you pass Nasara, Yansuru, Darba, Yadribu, and the Mazid fi babs, Ifti'al, going onwards, you go under the 14 Mazid fi babs, right? And then you have the basic Nasara, Yansuru, Darba, Yadribu, etc. Those are the Mujarrad, and then you have the Mazid fi. And it gets harder when you go on to do the different Sarfi Aqsam. So the different Sarfi Aqsam, Mithal Ajwaf Naqis, the very basic Lafif, Mahmuz, Mudha'af, learning about all of that, right? There are going to be rules, undoubtedly, and it just requires, again, a bit of sabr to understand the rules, and then to again just keep on practicing, like we mentioned, keep on practicing, do the same old thing that you did for the previous Qur'ans, more practice though, perhaps, and inshallah ta'ala, if you have been doing about 50 to 60 words of Qur'aning every week in practice, then by the time you reach, for example, Lafif, or you reach anything else. Yeah, Lafif is one of the hardest. By the time you reach that, you'll be able to do the Sarf Kabir of the Mujarrad and the Mazid Fi of that Lafif. You can probably do it in about 10 minutes. Everything. All of the Mujarrad, in Nasara, in Fataha, all of that, and in the Mazid Fi babs as well, as much as you can. And then you have that's the Sarf Kabir, and then you'll be able to do the Sarf Saghir as well of it. So the Sarf Kabir and the Sarf Saghir, you'd be able to do it in about, I'm not estimating incorrectly, about 10-15 minutes, perhaps about 10-15 minutes, you'd be able to, inshallah, do it, right? You'll be able to do the Gurdans, all of them, for that particular sabak lesson that you have that particular week. And it will become like a rota. You know, it will come to your mind like that. Right? You will see any Arabic word in the Quran as well now, and you can straightway do Gurdan of it. You can straightway recognize what Sigha it is. And if that's the position that your Gurdans, that your Sarf comes up to, then subhanallah, that is a position which will help you in the future, and you have literally just learned 50 to 60% of Arabic. That's if you work very hard on your Sarf. Very hard. It's an extremely important science to be able to recognize whether this is Madi, whether this is Mudari', whether this is Amr, whether this is Nahi, whether this is Jama' Sigha, whether it's a Wahid Sigha. So it's an extremely important skill, and to be able to differentiate a verb from an fi'l, a verb from an ism, a noun. Again, these are, basic skills that somebody might look down upon in the first few years, but believe me, it will have an extreme impact later on when we're reading higher texts. So, extremely important that we are able to recognize verbs and that we are able to conjugate them, and that's why extreme practice is needed. And again, some students, they write down their Gurdans and they just read it. It's wrong. Everything has to be in the mind, in the memory, right? And the more that is, inshallah ta'ala, the stronger your reading will become, right? And that should do for the section on Sarf. And as I said, because Sarf is is the hardest and the most important subject, I would say, in Arabic, it takes a lot more discussion to explain, right? But it's important. We can all do it, inshallah ta'ala, but we have to practice. This is the key thing with Sarf. We have to practice, we have to do exercises, and there are different exercises that your teachers will give you, and inshallah they do give you, and it is to do the Gurdans and to do those exercises with your heart and your soul, because these are the things that will really help you in the future. These are the things that will help you understand the Quran, right? Subhanallah al-Azim. Because otherwise, what's the difference between Dhanna and Dhananna? Right? If we don't know Sarf, we don't know what the difference is. Dhanna and Dhananna. So, one, there's if you know the Sarf and if you know the Arabic, you know that they are completely different in meaning. Yes, they have the same root meaning, but in terms of who's the active, who's the fa'il, who's the doer, it's different, completely different. So that's why it's important for us to practice upon this. And inshallah, we'll end this massive section on Sarf right now, and then we'll move on to Nahu. inshallah.